All right, do you know what time it is?
It's time to do our Kegels.
It is, and this is the most, in some ways, my favorite part of the show. Because who doesn't want a strong pelvic floor, Twila?
I think I want one, so I'm good.
Exactly. So this is the time of the show when we do our Kegel exercises. It's so easy. It's so simple and can be so effective and life-changing.
That's right.
And so we are going to go over the customized GynoCast world-renowned regimen.
Okay, you ready?
Yep.
3
times a day.
6
days a week.
9
seconds per Kegel exercise.
and 12.
Kegels in a row to make a rep. It's so simple. All you have to do is do 12 in a row, 3 times a day, 6 days a week, and hold them for 9 seconds. You will have a pelvic floor like a chain link fence. You will be able to pull a trailer with it. You will be the envy of your neighbors.
I think you will be, that's for sure.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the GynoCast. My name is Dr. Eric Heegaard. I'm a board-certified obstetrician gynecologist, and I'm here with my buddy, my boss, my wing woman. It sounds like
it's going to vary at every show. They're going to be a count, like how many times she said wingman versus wingwoman.
Yeah, whenever I think of, for some reason, when I think of wing woman, I think, hey, let's go and have some wings. Who do you go have wings with? My wing woman.
Now I'm the chicken lady.
Twila, she likes the dry rub.
I'm the worst chicken lady because I don't even eat with
That's
you
right. Oh, you're
anymore.
wrong. You know, I forgot about that. For those of you who don't know, and I totally forgot about this, Twila's a vegan.
How do you forget? I never let you forget.
I don't know. And I just had Twila made the most fabulous blueberry muffins this morning. Vegan.
Yeah,
I don't know. Vegan, non-dairy, non-flour, gluten-free.
They weren't that bad.
Made with
edible.
organic sawdust.
They were edible. Stop that.
Actually, they weren't just edible; they were fabulous.
Well, good.
I had one with this vegan butter, which when I was just giving you the benefit of the doubt and trying to be polite.
Yeah,
I looked at it, I thought,
exactly.
I thought, I can't just say no.
Yeah.
I put one of those things in my mouth, and I was like, oh my God! And then I popped the other half of it.
That's how I.
And then, Twila, I know what you're thinking right now. Get to the point, right? Because this is our goal.
You know I'm just gonna cut all this out anyway. That's fine.
Don't do that to me. That's so cruel. Yeah, that is so emasculating. You just do whatever you want, but I'll just take it out.
I mean, I'm the boss. That's what I have to do.
I know. Oh, you can't do that.
Okay.
Or at least.
Then I'll leave it. But you only get till 2 minutes. So you got like 15 seconds left. You better get to talking.
All right. Well, anyway, they were fabulous. And I went up. I didn't say, can I have another muffin? I said, I'm going to have another muffin.
Yeah, he did. He was very.
It was like, God, the power of that muffin, that vegan power just.
Why do you think I am the way I am?
I know. It was like it was like a battery that just blew almost. Anyway, so.
You're welcome.
On that note, today is kind of a fun beginning of a new series that I'm doing on the GynoCast.
Yay.
Where I interview women who are powerful and are creating new things and starting things over in their life and just are amazing people that need people.
Is this why you said you wanted to get my take directly?
That's right.
Okay.
So today I'm going to introduce and discuss in depth a little bit with my friend, my wing woman, my boss, Twila Dang.
This was a setup, folks.
It was a total setup.
It was.
I want to do this because you are the beginning of this series, because I'm going to interview periodically women I admire who other people will learn from and need to hear from, because you're so inspirational. You are so inspirational to people around you. And, and your story, your life story is amazing.
Well.
And how you went from what you were.
Okay.
A Southern belle.
Okay, don't start. It was like she was a sharecropper's daughter. I really wasn't. No, I totally wasn't.
Sharecropper. No, I just have this. I always have this image of you with a huge yellow hat.
Oh my goodness!
And the fluffy little.
I don't know why.
But you've done a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And in the last year or two, not only you went from creating something new to getting the idea of having your own company, to starting your own company, and taking it and running with it. And that is like the American dream. That is what most of us think about when we think you're sitting there in your cube, right? And there's some total dink, breathing down your neck saying, get this done, get this done, get this down, and, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
And you're thinking, I'm going to leave this. I'm going to throw dirt in this guy's face or woman's face. I'm going to go and start my own company. How many of us want to do that?
Yeah, a lot of us.
All of us do.
Yeah.
So I want to talk to you. I want to get your take. Tell us a little bit. I know this is huge.
Okay.
But, you're not from Minnesota.
No,
you
I'm
are
not.
from the South, from Virginia, I believe.
I've had a long, twisty road. I was born in the North, raised in the South and have chosen the Midwest. So yeah, I've seen a lot of the country in terms of that.
But we had an interesting conversation actually when you did not know I was going to ask you about this.
Yeah,
and we were talking, and Twila was actually discussing how people thought of her, or the kind of the impression of who Twila was, and you mentioned that people thought you were laid back.
Yeah. Well, I think it's not that, and I think part of that conversation for the two of us wound up being, I thought that people thought that, but apparently they don't. So,
That's right.
No, I think a lot of what I've been very specific in the last year that in starting this business, I own a company called Matriarch Digital Media, which is a podcast network and essentially rapidly becoming a lifestyle brand that speaks to women of my age group, specifically like the Gen Xers and older. About enjoying ourselves exactly the way we are, appreciating ourselves. We've been through some things, but we're fantastic right here, right now. Yeah. And what I noticed really early on in starting this business is that people who had always had me in a certain context had to shift the way that they contextualize me, like how I fit into their lives, how they understood me. And what you don't realize is that something people do every day. Every day we sort of have a mental ranking system of people that we know, that we don't know, that we love, that we care about, that we interact with. And we give them a position in our lives, in our brain.
Yep.
But that position isn't necessarily based on like their merit. It's kind of a ranking system against where you are. So there are some people in your head that you think they're above me because they're, they've accomplished things. Like anybody that knows anybody that if your name's not Stedman, then you think Oprah's above you. You know, that's how you think. Yep. And even he probably does too. But
I think he does.
I think he does. But you have a hierarchy for your loved ones, for your siblings, for your parents, for your best friends, for your associates, for your coworkers, for your spouses, for your kids. You have a hierarchy of how you rank people, and it's not necessarily a bad thing. It's really just it's how you contextualize yourself amongst those people.
That's
so
right.
when somebody in that group breaks out of that context and begins a new context, and it's vastly different than how you've always viewed them or understood them, you have to adjust.
That's right.
And
it's uncomfortable for everybody.
It can be. It really can be. And I've really spent the last year watching people who I know love and care about me or are curious about me or who, didn't necessarily like me, have to reframe how they absorb me.
Yep.
And I wasn't necessarily prepared for that. I wasn't prepared because I just always thought I'm still me. I'm just sort of me with the volume turned up because I figured out I figured out something that gives me purpose, which I didn't have, I never really had anything outside of having my children that gave me this much purpose.
Yep.
And given that, I just figured, well, if my light is shining bigger, everybody's going to be excited that that's shining bigger because it's good for everybody. A better me is a better friend and sister and wife and mother and everything else. And I was surprised to find that people struggled with me, stepping into a new context of my life. And I had to, and luckily I'm old enough, I've been through enough life experience to know that sometimes you have to love people where they are and let them catch up.
Yep.
And that's difficult for people sometimes.
Well, it's interesting because it makes me think of that quote from the Bible where Jesus said a prophet is never accepted in his own country.
Wow.
The idea that, if you're close to somebody, it's hard to see them in any other light than how you know them. And beyond that, so that's why I have this guy I know. I love this guy who is a gynecologist, very gifted, has done a lot of things, and he has given a lot of talks. And he always says an expert is somebody from out of town who has slides.
That's right. You
Isn't
know
that
what?
right?
You know
it's
what?
True. You can, I might be the best of whatever, and if I give a talk to people who know me, they're going to be like, yeah, right, whatever. But if I go to Cincinnati and I've got slides,
listen,
they're
know
going to
what?
think I'm the smartest guy around.
That is the truth and the light and the way, because there are people that I love that are family that I've told for years, like, if you do X, Y, and Z, these things will happen for you. I'm giving you my expertise, my experience. This is what happened to me, and they all say the same thing. Sure, Jan, whatever you say. And then we have a networking group that's sprung off of our company called Women in Podcasting. Yeah. And when I sit in that room with those women in the context of being an owner of a company that makes podcasts, and those women ask me the same questions and I answer them, they take notes.
Yeah, right.
They ask, hey, can we sit down and have coffee? Can we talk about what you know? And that, for me, that's actually been pretty heady to go, oh, hey, people actually think I know things.
And it's in the same city, too.
Yeah.
You got to go. If you go out of town, man.
Working on it.
Yeah, if you get some slides, you're going to be
working on it. I did have to do a PowerPoint. I did a PowerPoint. Was like, oh, hey, this is interesting.
But the thing is, really, I think this is also just another kind of impressive thing is that you have been able to, as you're talking about, making this transition from being what you were in people's eyes to what you are becoming, which is, you are the boss. You're the leader and the manager at this point.
Yeah.
You're setting the goals and you're establishing how to do that. And you have to almost, I'm putting words in your own mouth here, but in my mind, it's almost like shedding a skin, like a snake's.
Oh, absolutely.
That you have to
100%.
break
It's
out
a metamorphosis.
of this. And it's that much harder when you're in your own little group than if you were to just move to, Chicago, it'd be harder in some ways, but maybe easier because people don't have the predefined idea of who Twila is.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's fair because I think one of the hardest parts of this has been giving myself permission to do those things.
Yep.
And even giving myself permission to fully do those things. Like I started a company and I was in charge of a company, and it took me a few months to be able to tell people that I run a company and not, I do this thing. Yeah. Just the languaging of it. And a lot of that isn't even as an individual. A lot of that has to do with me being a woman, and women are sort of conditioned and socialized to not want to have the attention on them and to not be braggarts and to not be conceited. I mean, that was my mother's favorite word growing up was, I don't want you getting big-headed and conceited. So you always resist.
Too late, Mom.
Yeah, you always. Well, you know what?
I'm kidding.
We actually talk about that. I have. There's kind of a thing as a bit of a sidebar that I've always done, and I didn't realize it till somebody told me you need to start organizing this and writing it down. I've probably from the time I was in my mid-teens, I always knew who I was in the context of my family. I'm a middle kid.
Yeah.
My older sister was the beautiful one, just the beautiful one. I mean, she's gorgeous. She's like a Gerber baby, and she's always so pretty. And my younger sister was the baby, so she was the last one. So everything the top one did and the bottom one did are super special because it's the first and the last time these things happen. And I was solidly the most mundane middle, On worse, I was the squeaky wheel middle. So it was like, pay attention to me. Why is nobody paying attention to me? And I was the sneaky one and the liar because if you're not paying attention, I'm going to try to get away with everything, Yeah. And right around that point, I kind of had this weird epiphany as a teenager that if folks aren't going to pay attention to me, and if folks aren't going to hold me to these particular standards, and it wasn't because people don't love and care about you. It's just that's how they're taught to contextualize you. So if there's a pretty one, then there has to be a not pretty one, right? There's so she was the pretty one. So by default, I had glasses. I got to be the smart one, whether I was or wasn't. And I kind of just decided one day that I don't actually have to play by anybody's rules. And I was being a petulant teenager at the time, but it turned out to be like a defining thing for me for my whole life. So I just kind of said, I'm going to believe that I am the best of everything all the time. I still to this day call it delusional confidence. It went a step beyond fake it till you make it. It was, I'm just going to believe it until all of you believe it. And then guess what? It'll actually be true. And it's still like this to this day. You can't tell me that I'm not the best everything. I am the best talker. I'm the best mom. I'm the best friend. I'm the best, vegan muffin maker today. I am the best vegan muffin maker I've ever personally known. But in my head, that I don't operate from I have humility. I'm not an arrogant person. I fully know that I know in real life I'm not that. But I also know that it is perfectly okay for me to walk around and believe that and hold it so tightly that it carries me through any insecurity or any doubt or any fear. I can still march right into it anyway. When we started this company, you remember when I started this company, I sat down and had a conversation with you. The way I started conversations was like this. So I have an idea for this thing. I have no idea what it's going to look like. Have no idea how to put it together. But I believe in it because I know what I want to do. I can see the vision.
That's right.
Will you buy into it? Mm-hmm. Come on, that's crazy. And most people should have looked at me and been like, sure, Jan, whatever you want. But instead, most people looked at me and said, that sounds amazing. How can I help you? Yeah. And that comes from being able to find that place in yourself where you just have to believe wholeheartedly above and beyond logic and reason. And then it happens. It just happens.
Let me ask you this, because it's an interesting thing to hear you say that, is that a lot of people who are into self-development and that sort of thing talk about this, believe in yourself. Mm-hmm. And I always wondered to myself, and can that be taught? I mean, it's
Yes.
okay. That's good
I
to hear
think
because
it can.
because it sounds like to me that you've always kind of had a little bit of that and maybe just developed it on,
I think
from what it
everybody
was,
has a little bit of it. And you know how I know that for sure now? But I didn't
Oh.
believe it before. But I have kids.
Yeah.
And when you watch children operate in the world, when you watch them just decide things for themselves, that's and mind you, they don't have all of the stuff on them yet. They don't have the society telling them boys can't do this, girls can't do this. They don't have the young people can't do this, or this is the way we do things. They don't have any of that when they're, all the way up until like 10 years old, and we start putting that crap on them.
Yeah.
At 8, 9, and 10, when you ask your kids what they want to be when they grow up, and they say, I'm going to be a firefighter, I'm going to be a superhero, I'm going to be a fashion model, I'm going to be whatever it is they see in the world that they want, they just say, I'm going to have that.
Yeah.
And if you actually step back and say to them, okay, go for it, instead of, oh, well, that you can't really do that.
Yeah.
Like if I told my kid at 9 that she couldn't actually be a superhero, what's that really going to do for her?
Yeah.
So she gets a real world understanding that superheroes don't exist in that way. But if I don't tell her that, and she becomes, an advocate for people, and an advocate or somebody that fights for things that's important, and she realizes and discovers and creates her own path to be an actual real life superhero to some extent, what have I done? Now I've given her, endless capacity to dream and create, instead of, constantly kind of pushing down and pushing down. And mind you, I love my parents dearly. They're amazing people. And they raised me. So I will be forever grateful that they kept me and they raised me. But they were also from a generation where when you would tell somebody, I want to be this, and it was outside of the scope that they understood, they made it their job as realist and practical people and people who just wanted you to survive to crush that.
Yeah.
They would, when I would spend 8 or 9 hours drawing every day in my room, my mother wouldn't say, oh, those drawings are great. She would say, well, why does the arm look like that? Well, how come that didn't come out like that? Because she thought she was giving me critique to help me get better, but really what she was doing was killing my desire to do it because I couldn't do it perfectly.
Mm-hmm.
When I went off to college and said I want to be an artist, I actually went to study art. Both of my parents said, we're not paying for an art degree. You need to go study something where you can get a real job. Now, mind you, I picked psychology because that worked. But
Where did you go to college?
Hamlin University in St. Paul.
My recollection, I was pretty sure you went to.
Yeah, I was here.
So where were you living? Where did you finish your senior year of high school?
Robert E. Lee Memorial High School in Stanton, Virginia.
Robert E. Lee Memorial.
Okay, you're not allowed to do the Colonel Sanders.
Okay, so how did you end up? What brought you to Hamlin from Virginia?
I was trying to run away from home as far as I could get because as a middle kid who decided she was gonna get out of a one-horse town and reinvent herself.
Yeah.
I was like, how far can I go? And my parents were like, you can stay in Virginia or North Carolina. And I was like, but I want to go here. And they're like, no, Virginia or North Carolina. And so I tried to get to California. I tried to get to Hawaii. I tried to get as far as I could get. The only reason I wound up at Hamlin was twofold. I called the number on the brochure when it came in the mail and asked to talk to somebody in the psych department. And the guy,
ding, 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 those pamphlets actually work.
Right, they do. They do if you're desperate and you really want out.
Yeah.
So I called the little 800 number and asked, just being an arrogant 17-year-old, I want to talk to somebody in the psych department. And they transferred me because it was like a student probably wanted to work, studied, didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And so they transferred me, and the guy picked up the phone and said, hey, this is Matt. And Matt and I talked for about 10, 15 minutes. And then I, being arrogant, decided to say, well, Matt, this is really nice, but I'd really like to talk to the head of the department and not just like a person that's like a student or something. And he goes, well, I am the head of the department, so you can ask me whatever you want. And
I love that. That's the great thing about small liberal arts colleges.
Yes, and that was Professor Matt Olson, who turned out to be a great mentor and a great friend and a great supporter and somebody that I value to this day.
Did he admit you on the spot?
Well, no, he didn't. But he was probably one of the key factors in me going, I have to be there.
Yeah.
And then it turned out
when you have that kind of interaction with somebody
with authority, who treated me respectfully and talked to me like an adult and didn't just like dismiss me as a kid and hang up the phone. That was transformative for, a black girl that lived in the South that was used to being sort of pushed aside.
Yeah.
And then it turned out that my mother's neurologist, my mother has a long-term medical disability. He went to the University of Minnesota. So when he talked to my parents and they brought it up, because I actually applied and didn't tell my parents. I applied on the side and didn't say anything. I actually had a full ride waiting for me at the College of William and Mary, and I had a track scholarship at Winston-Salem Community College to pick from. Yeah. So those were supposed to be my two options. My dad wanted me to run track. My mom just wanted me to go to school.
Yeah.
And I applied in Hamlin in secret and was like, I'm just going to like see what happens. And I got in. And her doctor told her, oh, it's in Minneapolis. You know it's cold. It snows. She can't get in any trouble up there. So
oh, really?
Yeah, so that's what he really thought.
Oh,
so,
really?
So we flew up to check out the campus.
So you actually got your parents to come and look.
Yeah, my dad doesn't fly, and he told my mom, "You take her up there and you check out the campus. It's you decide. Like if you get up there and you think this makes no sense, we bring her home." And so we were here for 3 days, and I swear 3 days my mom spent like hanging out at the hotel. Didn't even hardly check out the campus or anything. And I came to her and I'm thinking like she's just gonna say no. She's not even give it a chance. I'm like, Mom, what's going on? And she says to me, Twila, am I having a good time? And I was like, I don't know. And she goes, better question. If I'm having a good time, do you get to stay? And I was like, oh, hey, you want me to order you some chicken wings? You want to go down to the pool? Like, what can we do? And so she looked at me and she says, I already knew you were going to go here. This has never been...
It's about foregone conclusion.
Yeah, this has never been like me making a decision. Your dad wanted me to come to make sure one of us saw this and is okay with it. But I know you, and you've always been the kind of person who knows what they want to do. I'm not going to stand in the way of that if this is where you want to be.
Am I ever going to get a chance to meet your mom and dad?
I can't get them to get in a car lately to come up here. They're
Am I going to have to fly down there?
You might have to. I mean, we can barely get them to come see us. So, yeah. I mean, but that was sort of the tipping point. It was okay. You're allowed to go. That was really my parents really for the first time giving me unflailing permission to go do things. Because usually it was like it was always a push pull, like somebody's dragging their feet in the dirt, kind of a fight to get things done between us.
Yeah.
And at that point, my mother was just like, "I'm going to let it go. You're an adult. You gotta make decisions."
Now, is that where you met your husband?
Yeah.
Okay, I know you're very protective, so I'm not going to dive into what a gorgeous man he is.
Yeah, we met. Yeah. We are college sweethearts.
Wow, so you guys have been together since you
almost 25 years.
Wow.
Yeah. Yep. Long time.
So what now? So do you finish your degree in psychology then?
Mm-hmm. Psychology and sociology, double major.
And so what happened after that? I know you've done a lot of different things.
I went on the long and winding road of not getting a real job
that's
to
all
pay
right.
bills. So my first real job out of college was I was a political freedom fighter and activist in school. Okay. And I decided I'm going to fight for diversity because when you're at college, when you're a black girl on a liberal arts campus in a predominantly white area, you become one of two things. Either really confused and have an identity crisis, or you become like Angela Davis on campus, which was me. So I ran the Black Student Association. I ran the Student Congress. I was actually like the first black woman to run the Student Congress in the school's history. I did, joined every group that was, an advocate group. So I was in the LGBT group. I was in the Asian, American group. Any group that needed like support. It was like Sister Soldiers. I'm here. Let's do this.
You can join the LGBT group without being LGBT.
You can be an ally. That's good.
All right, I like that. You can be an ally.
Yeah. So I was, so I joined all the groups. I did all the things. And I was like, I'm going to do this professionally. So I applied for a job with the Minnesota Department of Transportation in their diversity office. And I got a job. And it was a terrible job. And it was a terrible first work experience. Not because of their organization or anything that they did. They actually were far more, at the time, for what I understand now, looking back, they were far more committed to it than I would have expected an organization like that to be.
Yeah.
I just had a really terrible boss who had terrible management skills, and his management skills were the extent of doing things like booking conference rooms so he could scream at me once a week because he needed somewhere to vent. And I was 22 and didn't know, and I was 22 and I didn't know how to advocate for myself. And I didn't know that you could go to HR and complain about that. And I didn't want to get anybody into trouble, and I didn't want to get fired. It was my first real job.
Of course, the vulnerability of a power difference. And there's so many power differentials going on.
Absolutely. And I probably spent 6 months at that job being berated on a regular basis, thrown under buses during meetings. Like a meeting would happen and somebody wouldn't have what they needed, and my boss would look. I'd be in a room with all these people, and he would look at me and go, well, she didn't take care of it.
Oh my God.
And I couldn't, like, what are you going to say? So I finally I really got to the point where I made.
You were like the Hope Hicks of the transportation, except with less support. I think.
Yeah, I don't want to be Hope Hicks. I'll be somebody else. But I mean, it really came down to and looking back on it, I don't have regrets. I just think there are things that you do, and if you do better, when you know better, you do better. At the time, the only thing I knew to do was leave a bad situation, but I wasn't always very good as a youth to have a plan, so I would just quit. And that's what I did. I was like, you know what? Fed up with this crap. Quit. And it was like, but you got rent to pay, girl. You need a job. And that was like the long winding road of, I worked everywhere. I worked in HR. I worked in recruitment. I worked in sales, which was terrible. I was terrible at sales. I worked in security. I mean, I worked everywhere. Everywhere that the one thing my parents did teach me was, you don't let your bills go unpaid. So I was never unemployed for more than 24 hours. 24 hours came, I had another, no, seriously, in 24 hours, I had another job. Wow. If that meant I went to a hiring service that, if I quit my job the day before, by 9 a.m. the next morning, I was at a temp firm or something, signing up, taking their test. They had a placement for me by 3 o'clock, and I was back to work. I always was working. And it took me until I did that for probably a decade, because while I was on the sort of career gypsy track, which is not a favorable term, don't use it. Don't. If somebody calls you a career gypsy, y'all, it's not a good thing. It's not. It's really not.
It's not a compliment.
No, I remember.
See, at first blush, I think, wow, that's kind of exotic.
I remember working at. I worked at a large corporation. I was working in their HR department, and I was interviewing a woman. And on paper, she and I were identical. And she was excited about the prospect of trying different things. So she called herself a career gypsy. And first I was like, girl, you're crazy. And then 10 minutes after the interview ended, I was walking back to my desk and I was like, crap, I'm her. Is that what people think when they look at my resume? Because that's not cool. And I it was not cool. But at the same time I was doing that, my husband's trajectory was very specific. He had a very specific goal in mind. It was singular. He was working toward it. Yeah. And in support of that goal, it was very easy for me to go, I'll just keep working because he's got a goal. He's got a career path he's on. And we followed that path. So, we dated and he followed a path, and then we got engaged. He kept following that path. We moved around in support of that path. Mm-hmm. And I got to do really interesting things. I mean, at one point I worked for a giant corporation that...
Did you stay mostly in Minnesota during that time?
No, we did Minnesota. We were we were out in Pennsylvania. We were up in Connecticut. As a matter of fact, we were newlyweds. We had moved to Connecticut, and 3 weeks after we moved to Connecticut was 9/11. Yeah, so we were right there in sort of the heart of it. And I actually got, I can name check this one. I don't usually name check the place where I worked, but I worked for Diageo, which is Guinness's parent company. Hmm. Right. So, and if you know anything about me, I drink on the high holy days and, once a millennia. So imagine working at the company where they have this gigantic, full scale, Irish pub in the lobby next to the president's office. And it's open every Thursday for the employees. And I just walk by and go, are there bagels? Because if there's not bagels, I don't want to go in there. So I worked for the IT department. Yeah, and this is how crazy my trajectory is. I would, because I am, like I said, on the surface, I look like the kind of person that when I talk to you, I just sound like I know what I'm doing, even when I don't. Yeah. So I would talk my way in.
Until you make it.
Yeah, right? So I would talk myself into these jobs that I knew nothing about because they paid really well and they covered my rent. So I interviewed for this place, and I'm like, they're like, do you know about IT? And I'm like, sure. I don't know I didn't even know what IT was at the time. And they were like, well, we have video conferencing equipment. And so mind you, the stuff we can do in our phones with Skype, 15, almost 20 years ago now, they didn't have all that. They had these giant screens and pieces of equipment that you have to move building to building and hook up all these wires, like VCR wires. Yeah, right. And I was like, well, how hard can it be? So they hired me to do it. And I did it for a year and a half or something like that. But it was nuts because I didn't know I had no idea how to do that. I just figured you throw me in the deep end, I'm not going to get fired because I want a paycheck. So I would get my, and I would do this. We loved that job. All my friends loved that job because it was really cool work. I got my own work cell phone for the first time, but I was talking to people from all over the world. So I'd be at home with my poor husband who was on swing shift at the hospital, and they would call. I'd get a call at 2 a.m, and it'd be Japan or South America, and they'd be like, well, nobody's in the conference room. I'm like, because we don't open till 7. Why are you calling me? But I was always in it was the most fun experience of getting to do really different things. Plus I used to bring home free liquor every Friday. I bet. So Friday they would say, we're going to destroy this cache of gin. So if you want gin, come get it. Now mind you, I didn't have a license. I didn't drive a car. So I would go get 2 cases of gin. Cases. These are not 12 bottles in a case. So imagine me trying to carry 24 bottles of gin home on the city bus once a week. Because I would do that. I'd be like, oh, they gave us Captain Morgan this week. Rump, and try to do it home on the bus. They gave me, Guinness in bottles. Let's bring it home on the bus. But I was so I was everybody's favorite when I had that job. And then I literally did that kind of work until I had my kids. Yeah. We moved back here and said that was my only wish for my kids. I grew up moving around a lot. I was born in Michigan and moved all over before we settled. I was 12 before I had my first real friend because we moved so much. Yeah. And I said, for my kids, I want one thing. I want one hometown.
Stability.
Yeah, so one hometown, one experience. I want the same school, same teachers, same everything for everybody. I want us to have one place that no matter where you go in the world, this is your home.
Yeah.
And that's why we're here, because this is their home.
That's right.
So, and I was really like perfectly happy to be their mom and be at home with them and take care of them. And that was not a chip that was normally in my brain when I was born. So I was really happy to discover that it existed.
Yeah.
And then I got, as the weird way my life works, I made a joke at a party and it led to a job in radio.
Well, but the thing is that what I'm hearing from is that you not only did you have the confidence to you had the confidence to say yes and to say, I want to do this. And to open you to be open to possibilities of tons of different experiences. But
see, I don't like to give myself too much credit for that, because those decisions were more driven out of the desperation for the amount of money that was connected to it than the experience itself. I just never, I didn't sort of always say yes to life. I just always said no to being broke.
Yeah,
so it was like, can you do HR? Yes. Wait, it'll be like, it pays
for
$14 an hour?
Yes.
And then it was like, can you do video conferencing? For $17 an hour? Yes, I can. And then I would just go and scramble and figure it out. Like, it was like, okay, I'm going to make, and I was always strategic. I get to work and you make friends with somebody quick. Yeah. Somebody you can ask questions to that won't get mad and try to get you fired. You look for, you see folks around the edges, make nice with all the admins if you enlist. I was one of the admins, and then you know how the networks work in a corporation and in a business. And I just always knew how to maneuver. And then you know how to get out. Like, get out before it's about to go bad. Because if it's about to go bad, if it's about to go bad, if it's going sideways, get out. And mind you, I can't. It is one other thing that I admit that I struggle with talking to my kids about now. I was equally known for quitting a job, but quitting in spectacular fashion if I was mad. And that's youth. That's just youth and arrogance and lack of hubris. Can you
just give us that? Just it's just too juicy not to. What does that mean? Can you give us an example of quitting in spectacular fashion?
Okay, so I worked at a company where I was an admin for a very specific department, and it was all like guy-heavy department. The only women there was like 2 women in the department. Everybody else all the other women were admins. One day, one of the admins got into like an argument, like a shouting match with one of the like executives. Well, not even really an executive, like mid-level. And the next day, the mid-level person basically came to me and expected me to, I don't know, like get her fired or remove her or something. And I just wasn't going to do that. 1, because I didn't want to get in the middle of a mess. And 2, I kind of knew he was wrong. He was like the diva in the department. Yeah. And we wound up getting into a shouting match because my mama always taught me, you don't back down for a fight and nobody yells in my face. So when he crossed the line, I made the mistake of crossing the line too and just really getting like not backing down. Yeah. So of course, as people do in administrative positions, he went over my head. He went to my boss and was just like, she's doing the most. She's got to go. And my boss knew I was a good worker and wanted to preserve it. So her way of preserving it was she sent an email to me, him, his boss, like her overall boss, outlining how we're going to resolve it. The outline was solely like 5 steps of Twila to beg for forgiveness in public. So it was like, she's going to send an email to the whole department apologizing for her role in the situation. She's going to, sit down with the department supervisor over there and come up with like a 5-point plan to like rectify the relationship with the department. Because somehow it was my fault because I was the lowest man on the totem pole. And I fully now understand why she was doing what she was doing. She was afraid for her job. She couldn't afford to have it like really blow up and turn into a thing. But ultimately they had decided he was right and I was wrong and nobody was even questioning him. They were just saying you needed to shut up and do what you're told.
Well, it's like public humiliation.
Yeah, and that's what it was. He was what he went to her and asked for, and what she gave him was an opportunity to humiliate me on a public scale. It was one thing to say I should apologize to him, but I was supposed to write like an email to apologize to the department. And it was like, what is this? And I was having that moment. Like I said, when I quit, I never quit in a small fashion. It's always spectacular. And I was really angry. I'm not proud of this. I'm saying this was like 20 years ago now. So y'all don't hold this against me. Don't repeat it. I'm sure people will hear this and be like, oh, she's talking about that situation because they were in it. But I got so mad that I was like, you don't get to humiliate me. As a matter of fact, I think I'm done. As a matter of fact, I'm done and I'm not helping you. So I was the admin for an entire department. So I knew how to stick it to the department. And I got mad because nobody in the department would stand up for me. Everybody just basically said, yep, sounds about right. She should apologize and she should look stupid. And I was like, you know what? Then I'm just going to leave y'all with a parting gift. So I went through as the admin and deleted all the work orders for things they ordered, like stuff that it takes months to get. If you cancel it, you start over from zero. So I canceled like 150 orders in the department. Just hit delete and they disappeared. Then I stopped all the other work orders, like all the things that admins coordinate that keeps things going. I just went and just deleted the system like it never got started. So all of their custodial work orders and stuff, all that disappeared.
We're beyond the statute of limitations right
now. Oh yeah, completely. They can't come
so
find me. I'm good. I'm fine. Yeah, this is way beyond that. Matter of fact, actually, the funny thing is, like, a very good friend of mine still works there, and we still like once every while she just like, girl, that's how I was like, I know, like we just kind of laugh at it.
They haven't turned it into a verb like you're gonna get danged.
No, and they even this was before I was married, so they really can't. And then
that's true.
So then I did all of that. I showed up to work the next day and said, okay, I will send, like, literally he was so sort of petty about it that when I showed up to work the next day, he had like come up to the desk and he's like, you haven't sent out the email yet. Because he was just waiting for me to have this moment of humiliation. And I told him, I was very kind about it. I was like, you know what, you're right. I was planning on sending it out this morning, but I wanted to wait till everybody arrived at work. So it was no point in sending it early and people might not see it. I said, I just figured we'll wait and send it at like 10, okay? And he's like, fine. And he leaves.
God,
so then,
petty,
right. So
what
then
a
I
petty
go,
little person.
So then I go in the,
so
then I go in the email and I type up this email. And the email basically is me using all my $15 words to go, you know what? Screw you guys. I'm out. And this is why. And I explained all of it. I explained how you don't have to treat employees like this, how good employees won't stay when you treat them like this, how administrators are the backbone of places like this and they need to be listened to, how women aren't respected in places like this and you have to evaluate that moving forward. And that, to be perfectly honest, he's not a good human being and I'm fine to be away from him. And then I called my friend who's super tech savvy and said, can you schedule an email to go out like at a certain time? Because this is how old it was. You couldn't just like schedule things.
Yeah, right.
But you could if you knew like the techie stuff. And so she walked me through it. So I scheduled it to go out like an hour after I wrote it. So it was going to go out at like 10:30 or something.
Yeah. Then
I spent that next hour going through the department talking to everybody that's a friend of mine and was like, okay, so I'm quitting. I'll be gone in an hour. Here's what you need to know. So I made sure to put them in positions to be rock stars to save the day so that they could get the bump from the chaos I was causing. Mm-hmm. So I was like, okay. So I told like the one lady, okay, I deleted all these work orders, but they're saved in the backup file. So you go pull them out of the backup file, but don't do it today. Make them sweat all day today. And then you can pull it out like in 2 days and say, look, I think I can fix this. And then I was like, okay, girl, I'm telling you right now. I told another girl, like, listen, I deleted all the custodial orders. You can't get those back. They're going to have you do it, but you just do it with a smile on your face and look like you're a diligent team member and you'll get your 10% when it comes time for your review, I promise. And then I gathered my stuff up very quietly like I was going to lunch, but really I was packing all my stuff. And I left. Didn't tell anybody I was leaving, just left because they thought I was going to lunch. And I sat at the bus stop across the street and watched the windows. And then the email went out. And I watched people like sit up and start looking around like, what? And then I saw people get up and start walking around. Then I saw like multiple people getting up and walking around, which people in that department just didn't do. Nobody just wandered around like it was a party in there. Yeah. And then I realized chaos hit, right? By the time I got home, I had like a ton of emails. I mean, a ton of voicemails. It was like, and we had answer machines. So it was like all my friends in the department going, girl, you did not go like that. You're my hero. And then like my boss being like, you need to call me. 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 And then it was just like a whole like a random thing of like, I had probably 2 or 3 days of like voicemails coming through varying degrees of like, what have you done versus like, girl, you're my hero. And mind you, like I said, I've never done that again. That was like the last time I quit in Spectacular Fashion.
It must have been very satisfying.
It was.
That's like
and
again, it's like everybody's kind of dream to
It was. I'm not going to lie. I pretend like I didn't enjoy every second of it because I totally did. It was very petty. My fiance.
It wasn't as petty as your boss. That
no,
guy, trying to make you basically like get on your knees and crawl and ask for big.
Yeah, and even my husband, who is never an advocate for this, who I was only engaged to at the time, said to me, you know, babe, I get it, but you know, he had a moment where he was like, come on, and I was like, I know, I said, but I couldn't, and even he was like. And back then, he was the kind of person that if I had told him before it happened, he would have probably just went to work and punched the guy for me. Yeah. But he was kind of like, Like he's never had to worry that I don't know how to take care of myself. He was like, I know you know how to take care of yourself. I just don't want you to do things that'll keep you from having the things you want. And he goes, and you don't even really know what you want yet. So, and it was like, that's true. So that was really thank goodness he really was in my life at the point where he could say, I hope you enjoyed that. It's time to lay that down.
But I got to tell you, I'm just hearing the story. It's cathartic. And I feel the sense of, it is so, it's like popping a zit almost. Like I feel really satisfied.
It is.
And comfortable.
I said, even though I'm not, I would never do it again. I refuse to be ashamed of it because at the time I needed to know how to, like, sometimes you just need to know how to fight back.
It's not like you walked into a post office and blew something up. And you just.
Yeah, and I said it was like I said it sometimes it displays the most middle kid of my nature when I do things like that. Like that is the absolute most middle kid of my nature. Like I'll show you. It's never just like, oh, I'll hold my head up high with dignity. I always said, when I was young, I was like, dignity is for suckers. I'm getting you back. And that's kind of what happened there.
Do you want to mention his name now?
No.
I
actually don't even remember his name. That's the beauty of my life, that I've actually grown enough as a person that that I can't recall the most petty of those kinds of details.
Wouldn't it be wonderful
anymore.
if he could listen to this discussion?
I know he knows what happened to me because I stayed friends with the other person.
Yeah.
And I think he just had hoped I would like go disappear someplace. And so I have taken with great glee knowing that my person that I'm friends with has at some point told him, oh no, she like hosts a radio show and stuff. Like he knows I have now become more successful than he ever anticipated or vexed me to be. And so all you get to do is deal with that. Too bad.
Support for the GynoCast is provided by OBGYN West. OBGYN West provides the highest quality care from compassionate providers, including women's health issues from general sexual health to pregnancy care, childbirth, menopause, and beyond. Whether it's your teen's first annual exam, a new baby's on the way, or you're facing the special challenges of middle age, OBGYN West provides a wide array of services. Their doctors and PAs are trained in virtually every type of OBGYN service and procedure. OBGYN West provides exceptional care for women.
So now, how did you end up getting into radio? Tell us a little bit about.
Funny story.
Because you didn't go out searching to go into radio.
No, and I have no background whatsoever in this except that I have a big mouth and I like to talk.
Perfect for the job.
Right. So I have a group of girlfriends, mostly moms, but we have a group of really wonderful, solid girlfriends. And twice a year we get together. And we were having our go back to school get together. So we essentially declare the first day of school a national holiday. We do. We send the kids to school. We go pick a place, and we pretty much stay there all day. We don't mean to. We mean to just go have like breakfast, and then we wind up it's like 3:00, and we have to go get kids off the bus. We never leave. And so this particular year, most of the moms were transitioning. Their kids were out now. All their kids were in school, and they were ready to go back to work. And some had jobs already, and I wasn't there yet. I had the youngest kid. I still had a kid at home. And I said, I'm so glad I know all of you, all these professional women that do professional things, because the only thing I'm good at is talking, and nobody pays me to do it. And we all laughed and, went on about our business. And a couple weeks later, one of the women that was at the event called me. And she's a friend of mine through another friend, but now she's near and dear to my heart. And she works in radio. And she said, you made that joke at lunch. And I said, yeah. She goes, I don't think it's funny. I think you should meet my boss. I think you'd be great at this. And I went, seriously? And she's like, yeah, I think you'd be fantastic. And really just based off of the strength that she believed in me, I said, I'll go talk to whoever you want me to talk to. And I showed up at the radio station where I ultimately got a job. And for years, I just attributed this to being lucky. And which is weird because I don't usually think luck happens to me. I'm usually the one who has the weirdest story about how it all went sideways and, managed to work out after we got out of jail. So the fact that anything felt lucky was just like antithetical to me.
Yeah.
But I know now that it wasn't luck. I met this person at the perfect time. She decided to talk to me at the perfect time. And when I sat down with the woman who would become my boss, the radio station was transitioning. They were making a switch from their old format to a new format. And I think even when I sat down with her, it was more of a like favor to a coworker than a like she's taking me seriously. And she said to me, well, the station was a women's talk radio station, and now we're going to switch, and we're becoming a pop culture talk radio station. Yeah. And we're the first one in the country, and this is what we do. How do you think you even fit into that? And it just so happened that because of the way that when you keep good relationships and you do the right thing and you focus on the right things, good things happen to you. It happened that 3 months before I sat down in a room with this woman, before I made that joke at the party, my friend who worked at the company where I did the spectacular quit, she was
the spectacular quit.
She was
that should be a term.
She was super techie. Like, so we were both admins together, and we did like HTML class together. And I just got bored, and she just like found her happy place. And so she builds websites and she has this amazing business that she runs. And she had been saying for years, "I owe you one." And I was like, "No, you don't." And she goes, "No, really, I owe you one because you helped me set up my business so that I could actually like make money." She had this business and she was doing it for free just for the love of it. And somebody offered her advertising. She didn't know how to take their money. So I took her to the bank and said, "Let's get you a business account number and get you an EIN number and get you going." And we did that. And she was able to make money. And now she's got this business that's like 20 years old now.
Yeah.
And she'd always been waiting for a chance to help me out. And so I had called her like 3 months before, just checking up, and was like, "I'm probably going to start a blog because all moms start a blog." And she goes, "Oh, what do you want it to be?" And I told her. And she said, "Okay, do you have the domain?" I said, "Yeah." So she took the domain. She called me like 4 hours later and said, "Go type in your domain." And she built me a website.
Wow.
Now, the beauty of my life is because I was good to her then, and she was looking for a way to pay me back. 3 months
Karma.
later, 3 months later, when I'm sitting in the chair across from the program director of the new pop culture talk radio station, I could look her in the face and say, "Well, I run a blog called Pop Culture Parent, where I talk about."
Is that still going?
It still exists. I don't really use it right now, but it's going to become a podcast eventually. But I talked about the intersection of parenting and pop culture. So I now look like somebody that's an expert in the one area where she needs to populate shows.
Mm-hmm.
And like a few months later, she gave me a job. And it was like, oh, I get it now. Like, I get that these things connect.
Yeah.
If you treat people right and you pay attention and you value relationships and you just don't, like, it was one of those lessons I'm glad I learned over time. Like, just do no harm. You know, like, if you try your best and put your best effort out there and you give the best of yourself that you can give and you be supportive of other people's best efforts, those things will always come back to you.
You know, it's interesting you mentioned that because I was gonna talk about my own observation of you as just a person. Is that there's a sense, at least my observation is of as an underlying current of ethics.
Yes.
Of an ethic of how you live your life and you deal with your family and you deal with your friends and you deal with your business that is very ethical, and it seems to go through everything.
You know, it's funny. When I was in 9th grade, I'm still proud of it. I still have the book in the house. And in Virginia, in the high school I went to, I won. They pick a boy and a girl in the 9th grade every year, and they award them with the Rotary Code of Ethics Award.
Mm-hmm.
It was like the local Rotary Club.
Yeah.
And you don't know anything about it. You can't apply for it. It usually goes off of a teacher recommendation or somebody recommends you, and they kind of vet you their way, and they decide who gets it. And I remember being floored when they called my name, because it was just like, what? Who? For what? And they gave me this book, and the book was called I Dare You. Mm-hmm. And it's an old school, like, Rotary book that just has, like, tenets for how to live a good life, like how to be, you know, truthful and honest and deal with people and how to stand up for what you believe in and all these things. And I remember getting this book and being really, really proud of it because it was like somebody saw that I was, like, it's the idea that that the real like beauty of ethics is they're not the things you do when other people are looking. They're the things you do when nobody's looking.
Right.
And it was remarkable as a 15-year-old to have somebody say, "We've been looking and we see it."
Yeah.
And I remember like poring over that book cover to cover. As a matter of fact, I still have it. I gave it to my son to read a couple years ago, and I just gave it to my daughter to read because I love the idea that if you have the tools and somebody gives you the tools to think about how you want to think and walk through the world, you'll use them.
Right.
You know, somebody gives them to you, you'll genuinely use them. And I didn't realize that book actually was one of the first things that gave me the vocabulary to understand how I wanted to walk through the world. Even when I quit in the spectacular fashion, I didn't quit because I wanted to be like stupid and pull a prank. I quit because my ethics wouldn't allow me to stay and be humiliated. I quit because I couldn't. Yeah, I quit because I couldn't sit and watch other people be treated inhumanely when I really could have just ducked my head and let that girl get fired. Yeah. You know, like that's not in me. That's never been in me.
Well, I think that's why that that spectacular quit, as you
Yeah.
is so satisfying for people who hear about it. Is because you've never told me that story before, but it's
I haven't. I'm surprised I haven't.
It's so satisfying, but it is because I think everybody, and you didn't do it to be, and you use the word petty, but I don't see that as being.
I dug into the petty to like. To,
you
it was like a cherry on the sundae.
Yeah, that's right. But you did it because it was wrong. How they were treating you was wrong.
Yeah,
in virtually every capacity, and it was impinging on your sense of right and wrong, and your own sense of personal ethics and that sort of thing. And I think it's that's why I think it's so satisfying to hear that story, because everybody, and that took courage to do that, and creativity. I got to tell you.
Yeah. And
everybody kind of hopes that, most of us go through our lives, and I'm sure you've had this experience thinking, God, I wish I'd said this in this response.
The problem is I have very little points in my life where I wish I had said it. I always have a point in my life where I was like, oh, I said it, didn't I? Like, that's usually what happens is I say it, and then it's like, and here comes fallout.
Well, but so maybe it's better to just say it, and because you probably did it right most of the time. But I think most of us listen to that and think, God, I hope that I would have had the courage to manage that situation in a way that stuck it to the people who needed to be stuck to, and also, you helped the people who needed to be helped. Who, it was kind of beautiful.
I even felt bad because I knew it was going to blow back on friends afterwards. I was like, okay, I still want to do it, but I don't want it to totally blow back on you. I mean, I'll say that, like, my mother taught me when I was a little kid. When I was really little, and like bullies were the kind of bullies that you'd see in comic strips, like the kind that would just like throw you in garbage. And that's a true story. I used to get thrown in the garbage if my bully caught me all the time.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a regular thing. And my mother used to tell me, she said, you have enough $15 words that by the time you're finished talking, they shouldn't realize they got insulted, and you should have a head start on getting to run. And so I took that to heart. So I was like, you know what? If I'm going to double talk you and confuse you. And because I was like a petty, because I always had that, like, I got to stick it to you, I would say something really insulting.
And they wouldn't even know they were being insulted.
And they would figure it out as I was like gleefully running around the corner cackling because I could never just let it be. I couldn't just walk away clean. No. It would be like, ha, got ya. And then I'd try to run, and then I'd have to try to avoid getting thrown in the garbage. But it was worth it because it was like I got away with it. Like it was always worth it.
Yeah.
But I had to learn really early on how to like sort of talk my way into and out of things.
I love that. So now you're doing radio,
yes.
And we met in the middle.
Yes, that's where we met. Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I could already see as you were kind of going through this, that you were starting to kind of chomp at the bit or bristle a little bit with constraints, because in the middle of this, you became. I remember, if I'm correct, you became the president or the head of an organization briefly.
We're going to talk about them.
Well, you don't have to.
Mess.
But you got a job kind of involved.
I got a day job. Yeah,
a day job.
I made, and I'll say I make very few mistakes in my life, but I've always had a struggle with the idea of the notion of like your job not being something that you enjoy, is just something that's required of you.
Yeah.
And so I used to always say, oh, I need to be working. I need a job.
Yep.
I need a job. And a job was always like, it earns me money, but I have no joy in it.
Right.
And it doesn't matter how high the status is. If you don't have joy in it, then it's going to be kind of a miserable experience. And I would always find myself in these experiences where I could do the job capably, but I just didn't have any kind of patience for politics that had up in at work or personalities that don't go with my own. I just didn't have time for people to be playing games and doing double talk with me. And jobs always wound up boiling down to that because there's always like weird competition and stuff and lack of collaboration that happens when you're just doing a job.
Yeah.
So.
And that's why I actually wanted to bring it up, because I thought it was so interesting that
because I hate that job.
Well, yeah, exactly. But the thing that was impressive to me, number one, is that it was sort of I got the sense that it was you took on a position of kind of a big position.
Yeah, it was.
And I don't know if you had much experience again in that area.
Zero.
But you got there, you took it over, and then you realized it wasn't right.
Yeah.
And you didn't just you didn't just sit in it.
No.
And you made the conscious, deliberate decision to exit.
Yeah, it was, and I don't like giving up on things. Like when I say I quit things, I don't. when it came to work was something I was always like, I could always separate from, the rest of my life because it was just a job. It was just a means to an end. It was a survival skill.
Yeah.
But the rest of my life, I am like the loyalist. I am I will fight until it's sinking. Yep. I will help you. I'm there for you. If I'm your friend, I'm your friend to the end. Yep. If I'm here to fight for you, I'm the first one there and the last one to leave, no matter what it is. That's who I am. So I've always been hard pressed when I get into a position where I actually see the potential to just walk away from it. And really early on with that particular job, I saw that there was a level of dysfunction that I couldn't fix. And it was also the kind of dysfunction that if I didn't get out, I was going to wind up being the person who gets tagged with it. Mm-hmm. And I had to say to myself, what looks worse? Quitting after a short amount of time or staying and winding up being the person who's holding the bag on what could possibly even be like unethical behavior. Right. And it was like, yeah, nope, not me, not my bag. I got to go.
It's interesting because I was having a conversation with somebody in the last couple of days where we were talking about medicine, and we were walking out, and part of the conversation is I just remember, she's a younger physician. I said, one of the best and most important things you can do as you mature in your specialty is to figure out who not to operate on. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. It's because we all want to do. It's you get yourself into it, and if you're lucky, you don't get into it. But if you're into it, you got to be able to extract yourself before things get too.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's important not to know who not to operate on. It's just like another example might be, it's hard to know when to sell something. Like if you buy a stock and it's going up.
Well, that's instinct.
Yeah, and mm-hmm. It's hard to get out sometimes when you're in.
Yeah, it's instinct. It's understanding. Like you have to learn enough about yourself and enough about how the world works around you. It's the reason why I'm so glad that I decided to study sociology as well as psychology, because I understand what goes on in my head, and I tend to understand what's going on with people's heads when they're talking to me. But I also really understand what the system looks like around them, like how you fit into this thing and how this thing is impacting what you're doing or what you do, how what you do upends the rest of it if you're not paying attention. So I knew I could really quickly get in and assess that there were like a couple bad apples. Yeah. The whole thing ain't bad, but there's a couple bad apples. But those bad apples are bad enough in the worst spot that they're really going to do damage to this whole thing. And it was like, and I could see that there wasn't really any way for me to fix the whole thing.
So if you were, the thing is that to me represents a level of maturity and sort of self-knowledge mm-hmm. that, allowed you to realize that, you don't like to quit things. You like to you like to fix things and make things work, but this is not worth it.
Yeah, that's
to
growth.
You. And so, what would I guess what is if you were talking to a younger person, what is the lesson, or what would be the advice that you would give to somebody in a similar situation?
I always tell younger people, know yourself first. Like know where your lines and your limits are, because people, especially when you're young, people will put you in positions often or push you to do things that you are not comfortable doing. You will think you don't have power to say no. You will think you don't have power to stand up against it. I always say, one, measure where you are. Like know where you are. If you're a part of a large corporation and it's like $1 million or $1 billion company, and you don't like how you're being treated by a supervisor, but you can see from history around you and from what other people have told you that reporting it will wind up leading you to being, exited gracefully or not so gracefully, then self-preservation is in order. Like, then that means don't just quit your job and walk away, but put together a plan. I tell everybody now, I said, learn from the mistake of my youth. Have a plan. Always have a plan. So if you need to exit, the exit should involve you doing your job to the best of your ability, going out, finding a new job, getting everything in place, respectfully giving your notice, and getting the heck out of Dodge. Preserve relationships, because you just never know where you're going to cross paths with people again. Right. You really don't. But I also tell young people that you have to know what you absolutely believe in. What are your core things? What will you always fight for? Because if you don't know what you stand for, you're going to always fall for anything.
Yep.
And sometimes it's worth the trouble. Sometimes it's worth the risk. Sometimes it's worth the thing that you could lose to fight for it. If you're a young person and you believe, that dreamers deserve to have a status in this country and you want to do stuff to fight for that, fight for it. Yeah. Figure out where and how and on all fronts that you can do that, and then do that. Figure out what energies and resources and talents you bring to the table and use them. Use them everywhere. And the other thing I can tell people now that I know now for sure is that we live a long time. We have in the scope of the universe, we're but a speck in the dust. I get that. But the time that you spend on this planet, if you're lucky and you get 80, 90, 100 years, it's a long time. You can do a lot in that time. Don't waste any of it. You can actually do things that you love and that you're passionate about. You can actually spend your time with people that are worth it. Nobody, if you're smart, should have to spend any part of their life saying, I spent this many years with someone who didn't like me. I spent this much time doing work that I hated. I spent this much time being sad and unhappy. We have the actual power over all of those things. We actually can make such dramatic changes in our lives just by shifting the way you think, just by shifting the way that you move through the world. I mean, I was a young person who, when they say the cup is half full, the glass is half full or half empty, I used to think the glass was half empty, it had a crack in it, and the water was leaking out over the table. I was an absolute pessimist. Yeah. I didn't believe anything would go right. I didn't believe things would go well. And by and large, they didn't, because I always had a mindset that set it up for failure before I ever got started. To be honest, I mean, I might have been like the best HR person ever, the best salesperson ever, but I always walked into those situations thinking, I'm going to fail because this is going to fail.
How did you switch that around?
I'll be honest, it had nothing to do with me. It really didn't. Like I said, I got super lucky. It doesn't work like this for everybody, and certainly doesn't work like this for most people. But the universe decided that I was going to be somebody's mom. And when I figured out that, when I actually looked my kid in the eyes, when I looked my one and only boy in the eyes for the very first time, it was like a little button clicked and said, you know what? You get to do this however you want. Like, this is your restart. When you say you want to reinvent yourself and whatever, this is your restart. Wow. And I got to be his mom, and I got to just decide his mom doesn't have to be, like Twila over here, 20-year-old Twila, 25-year-old Twila was like, I'm never going to get out of debt. I'm never going to have a job I like. I hate people. Oh, people get on my nerves. But 29-year-old mom Twila was like, the world is a beautiful place. Yeah. You're a bright shining star. I can't wait to see what you do. I get to, we get to lay in the grass and look at the stars today. Like, it was the world was full of possibility. Wow. It really was. And
one of those really truly transformative events.
A million percent. And then it just doubled down. I thought, I don't have the capacity to love anything as much as I love this. And then I had a daughter, and I found out I do. It just doubles. It doesn't ever recede. It just gets bigger. Yeah. And that immediately
gets bigger. It's not like you're splitting it.
Yeah, it changed the way I thought about everything. It changed, like, what do I want to spend my time fighting for? If I believe these things as much as I say I do, what am I doing to actually change things? Like, am I giving my time to things? Am I giving my energy to things? Is it, if I want my kids to have all of these things, I have to make sure I'm providing this. So if they're going to have a good relationship with our family members, I have to make sure I have a good relationship with our family members. Yeah. I have to let go of things and not hold grudges and not be petty and not, like, those things don't matter. Like, I had a cousin I hadn't spoken to for like 10 years because I was mad about something stupid. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And, I had my mother-in-law, I've had a long, strange trip to family. Mm-hmm. Like we were very much like adversaries for a long time. And, I had my kids and I realized something. I would do absolutely anything for them. That's what she's been doing, and I don't have to
this commonality.
Yeah, I didn't have to be an antagonist in that process. Sometimes I just got to stand back and let her love her son. I might not like how she does it, but it's her choice. She gets to love him as irrationally as she wants. And all I can do is, be somebody that's supportive of them in what they're doing. And like I said, it changed everything. And to be honest, the best thing it changed was that it was no longer about me. Yeah. And most people walk through the universe thinking it's about me. It's about, my life is so hard. Everything I'm doing is so hard. Everything's so difficult. And when you have somebody else to take care of, you realize I am not important to this at all. And mind you, nobody will remind you that quicker than kids. They really will. As they get bigger, they will remind you at every turn, I don't need you. Like, you just got to go.
Well, if you're doing it right.
Yeah, if you're doing it right, that's exactly what's supposed to happen. They're supposed to push away from you. Yeah. They're supposed to go be their own people. And I said, I got really lucky that it turned on the perfect part of my brain at the perfect point in my life to decide that I get to have whatever life I want. Like, I didn't have any rules. I didn't have expectations about how to be a parent because I didn't expect to be a parent. Yep. So then I parented however I wanted. My mother will tell you, if you speak to her, that it was very frustrating in the beginning because I just did what I wanted. It was like, this isn't what we do with babies. This is what I do with babies.
Yeah.
This is what we do with toddlers. This is what I do with toddlers. Like it was, I just did what I wanted and what felt right and what instinctually felt good.
Right.
And they were turning out okay. And I was getting more confident. And the more confident I became as their mom, the more confident I became in my own skin, the easier it was for me to not be so defensive and antagonistic and aggressive with people. It became, it really became, hey, I want to model. I don't want my kids to do as I say and not as I do. I want them to see the kind of person that I want them to be. I want them to be good humans. I got to be a good human. Am I a good human? And if the answer to that was no anywhere, then I started to work on it.
Yeah.
And it changed everything. I'm beyond grateful. Mind you, don't play this for them because then they'll think I owe them something. But I mean, they really changed everything.
So you're doing radio. The other thing you were kind of working on didn't fit. And so how did the idea of actually starting your own company happen, and how did you
that was easy.
realize it?
I hit the magical age where I started being treated like I was irrelevant by a wider society. I got to 40, and 40 is this weird age where they say you can have everything, you can be everything, you're at the prime of your life, but the only things that are ever sort of directed at you are, we can take away the wrinkles and the white hair and the grays, and do belly sculpting for your belly, and do you need a boob job, and like all, or like how do you stay young and sexy and relevant, because like men get to age gracefully and women just get to get plastic surgery. It was all of these weird things coming at me, and for somebody that was always pretty much traditionally like a tomboy that didn't really ever care about that stuff, I was getting really frustrated that that's all that ever got directed at me.
Yeah.
At the same time, I was in a work situation with the radio station where they were skewing more entertainment, they were skewing younger, and I kept being told professionally that if you could just dial it up a notch and get a little crazier and a little sillier, you could go a lot further. And that really just translated to, can you play dumb on air? And I just didn't have the capacity to do it. I didn't have the ability or the desire to be dumber than I was. I was proud of my intelligence. I was proud that I went to college and I have a degree and I'm a learned thinker and that I'm a deep thinker, and that sometimes I sound serious and sometimes I really have deep thoughts about things that other people don't have deep thoughts about.
Yep.
And it was all sort of coming to a weird head. And I sat down and was just like, well, what am I going to do next? And to be honest, I thought my next act was going to be, I'd quit all these other things and, go work at my kid's school.
Yeah.
And, be, like we'd probably put them in private school and I'd go work at the school and get the school discount. And I'd be like the librarian or the lunch lady or whatever administrative job allowed me to be where my kids were. And we'd be on the same schedule. It was very practical. Because like I said, always up until now, jobs were practical. Yeah. The radio station was the first job I ever had that was fun.
Yep.
Like I didn't understand that you could have a job and have fun at it.
Right.
And yes, you saw when I got to that point, I would spend many a recording session with you sort of lamenting at the commercial breaks, like, wouldn't it be great if this was like this? And I'm kind of sick of this, and I don't know what I'm going to do about this.
Yeah.
And the idea kind of came to me all at once. And to be perfectly honest, I can say in this space that you were one of the real catalysts for why this happened. Because I put a crazy idea out in the universe and said, wouldn't it be great if this existed? And you looked me in the face. You were really the first person to look me in the face and go, if you do that, I would happily support it. And you didn't mean like how my girlfriend's like, I'll come help you however I can. Like, we'll stuff envelopes. Like, you were like, I know people. We can connect you to resources. If you'd want to do this, I'm in. And I went home that night, the very first night we talked about it, convinced that I was going to like talk myself out of it and in turn not have to put you in a position to help me. So I went and looked it up on the internet. I looked up Women's Podcast Network just to see. Nothing came up. And Google doesn't do that. Google populates everything, right? It populates
I'm astonished
everything.
by that, really.
Yeah, and it came up like 0 result. And I was like, holy bucket. And then the next thing I thought was, well, I mean, okay, but it needs a name. I'm sure the name is taken, and now I'll use that as an excuse not to do it. So I looked up Matriarch. I said, if I ever had a company, what would I call it? Of course I'd call it Matriarch. The only other thing I could call it was Cocky Bastard, because that's me. So, like that was...
But Matriarch, I got to tell you, it's just a fantastic name.
Yeah, so
where did you come up with that?
It was really I thought if I was going to name a company if I was going to make a company for women, what should you name it? What's the most powerful woman you can find? That's really what I thought. What's the most powerful woman you could find? The most powerful woman is a matriarch.
Well, it's interesting because it also implies a little bit the population you're trying to get at too, because there's a maturity to matriarch, not
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
not
there's
like
a mature.
teen,
There's
teen
a
podcasting.
there's an actual like a title that's been earned over time.
Right.
Right. And to be honest, I was really to me it said that, but it also said this is not like a president could be a guy or a girl. Yeah. Like a leader could be a guy or a girl. A matriarch is a woman.
Yeah.
And I wanted it to really specifically be a woman for a woman.
Yeah.
And so I looked that up. I looked up the title, and it didn't exist. And the domain was there, and there was like a restaurant called Matriarchs that was out of business, out of DC, but nothing existed.
Yeah.
And I kept saying, okay, if the universe is not giving me a sign, this is a flippin' sign. Like I gotta, and that was probably the only time in my life where I have been this foolhardy this quickly, where I just went, I feel like if I don't do this, I'm gonna regret it my whole rest of my life, like the whole rest of my life. So a couple days later, our current CFO and I sat down and did our usual weekly like mom breakfast thing where we just like vent about things. And I was like, okay, so I have an idea. And I've been talking to her about this forever. And, just kind of going like, it'd be really cool if this was like this and if this was like this. And at that time I said, okay, listen, this doesn't exist. I don't know what it is. I don't know what it's going to be. But I kind of want you to do it with me. Would you just think about it. Just think about it and let me know. And as soon as I said, just think about it, get back to me. And right when I finished talking, she goes, okay, good, because you need a license in the state of Minnesota. And she had already been thinking about it. She was just waiting for me to ask for help, and she was willing to give it to me. Yeah. From within that first week, it took us, probably took us like 7 months from that first conversation to be a fully incorporated legal business entity. And then I jumped into the road of actually making product and recruiting talent and balancing all of the weird things that happen when you own a business. Now, mind you, my experience for owning a business up until this very point, the only business experience I ever really had was running my grandma's illegal store out of her kitchen when I was 12. My grandma.
What did she sell at her kitchen?
My grandma lived in like a project. Like if you know a project, like it's a housing development for poor people, particularly poor Black and brown people. Yeah. And so she lived in housing development, and she ran an illegal store out of her kitchen of her apartment, where we sold soda and ices for a quarter that we make ourselves, and cigarellos and cigarettes, and like wrapper papers for like rolling weed, and 40-ounce bottles of alcohol. So we would like have all this. Yeah, we would have the stuff and hide them in her apartment in various places because she would have housing inspections, and if they found it, she could get evicted. So we would hide the stuff around the apartment, put like the day's worth of stock in the fridge to use, to sell, and people would come up. And my job was to balance the books. So I made the sales. I made sure people's books were straight. I counted the money. I made sure, like she taught every one of us. She pulled us aside and gave us a summer where she taught us how to do it because she said you should always have your own money and know how to manage your own money. That's how I learned about money. It was from my grandma. And that was my only business experience up until the time that we went to the bank and got checks that said Matriarch Digital Media on them.
But you know what's fantastic about that though? It's only illegal because we define it as illegal.
It was illegal.
Well, but I know, but it's illegal. But you're basically you're just selling stuff that people want.
Yeah.
And it's only illegal is because
but we were selling like 40 ounces of alcohol. I don't think she was really checking for IDs.
Okay,
yeah.
So I'm trying to think. I'm just trying to imagine. 40 ounces is a big freaking bottle.
Like Colt 45s, like the old what's his name, Billy D. Williams commercials. Like we used to sell like Colt 45s and all that kind of stuff, and then like we'd buy like a sleeve of ice, like make a gallon of Kool-Aid. Buy a sleeve of ceramic styrofoam cups, and make ices in them and charge $0.25 a pop. So mind you, a packet of like Kool-Aid is like 10 cents in the store. So you do that, a couple cups of sugar and water. You make essentially 40 or 50 cups of this, freeze them, and sell them at $0.25 a pop, or 50 cents.
You were like making
the real good
100 times.
Well, and here was the kicker. My grandma's whole thing was you work for her for the summer, so we got to spend the summer away from my parents. Like had kind of like a loosey goosey summer. At the end of the summer, she cut the profits with you. She split them in half, so she gave you half on the way home.
Wow,
but you didn't know you were getting that. You did the work because it was the work, and you wanted to make grandma proud, and you wanted to learn this thing, and she was trusting you with her business. It's her business. Like my grandma was a retiree that didn't make a lot of money. She was trusting us, to do this. And at the end of the summer, she gave me an envelope, and the envelope was full of money. And she was like, "You earned that."
Cash.
And it was like, and now mind you, my mama snatched that envelope out of my hand quicker than you could say boo. But it was still like I still had like a 5 whole minutes of glory of like envelope of money. I was like
nothing feels like that.
Right. Until my mom was like, "You don't need all that money. I trust you with that." So she took it. I mean, she gave it back to me in increments, but he was like, "No, you're not going to buy 100 comic books right now. Go sit down."
Yeah.
But yeah, that was how I learned about. That was my business experience. And don't you feel glad to be an investor now?
Yeah, right. Exactly. Oh yeah. Well, that I only find that more impressive, not less. So you start the matriarch.
Yeah.
We, how many podcasts did you start out with?
One.
Which is
two.
Well.
Two. Yeah, one. Well, no, technically I started out with one. I started out with you.
Yeah.
You were the catalyst. You said, "I'm coming. I will come with you."
Yeah.
And then I called my old radio partner. We had lost our show. Our show had been canceled at some point, and I had said to her, one day, and we, but that was pie in the sky talk. And I had talked to her really early on and said, "Okay, listen, this sounds nuts. I'm gonna explain it to you." And then I told her, it's going to be quiet for a long time. You're not going to hear from me. I don't want you to fret. I promise you, when I pick the phone up again and I call you, it's going to be to work, and you're going to have to be ready to work. And she was like, "I just know not to doubt you, so you tell me when." So like a good 8 months went by, and she didn't hear from me. And then I texted her. I think we deposited the investor check. And then I texted her and said, "Are you ready to get to work?"
Yeah.
And my phone rang, and she goes, "Oh, my God, what are we doing? When do we start?" Like, it was just like, all right. And within, a month, we were in production on 2 shows.
Well, one of the things that I really loved as you were starting out with this is you brought a meeting together.
Yeah, everybody.
Where I got to meet some of the other people that were going to start doing podcasts.
Yeah, and now everybody's working.
Yeah, and right from the beginning, though, you created something that was bigger than just a podcast or one thing. You started to create this sense of belonging to something bigger.
Well, you know what? I can speak very clearly that is the one really good thing that came out of my career gypsy experience. Is that I knew what it was like to work at bad places. I knew what it was like to have bad coworkers. I knew what it was like to have bad bosses and people that had the potential to be better, but they weren't better. And I just knew if I ever did it myself, I was going to try to bring the same energy and enthusiasm that I was like. I wanted to try to be what I never had on one level. And then I really specifically said the one leadership area where I am really great is being somebody's mom. And the attributes that I use being my parent to my kids are the same attributes I'm going to use to work. Yep. So if we're doing this work and everybody's in it together, then we have to be in it together. So that means I need to I want everybody to see each other's faces. We have a as we affectionately refer to it as a no asshole policy. So I only work with people that I think are good to work with, and would be not just fun and entertaining, but like passionate and ambitious and want to do the work. I brought people together, and I try to recruit for talent based on what I understand of you once I get to know you. I don't just, go for like, oh, you have this many social media followers or oh, you're my cousin's friend or whatever. I really sit down and talk to people. Most of the time, if you come to work for us, you've had at least 1 3-hour meeting with me or probably a 5-hour where we just sit and talk. Yeah. And the thing is, most people just think, oh, she just talks too much. But really and truly, it's a trick. I sit down and talk to you for a long time because I just want to see where you go. And when I see where you go, when I see what's in your heart, when I see what you're passionate about, when I see how you approach things, what you ask me, how we interact, I know who you're going to be when we sit down and do real work. I know if you have it or if you don't. I know if you have a point of view or if you don't. I know if you have the work ethic and the patience and the fortuitiveness to go through a process like this, because this is a marathon, not a sprint. Yep. You don't do these things and become successful overnight. You do these things and it takes time. You have to build. And I can see that in you. If I do see it in you, I promise you get 150% of me. I never ask anybody to give more than I can give. So
Matriarch started out with 2 podcasts or whatever. Now it is now.
We're not sure in production on. We have 3 podcasts that run. We are in production right now on 4 additional that are actively producing right now, and we have another 5 in some stage of pre-production.
Yeah. So, and this is and we actually, and so this is less than a year of actual.
Yeah, we've only been in business 1 calendar year.
Yeah. So
like official business 1 calendar year.
Yeah. So you've gone from 2 to 3, and now you've got.
We're at 7 now. There are 7 actual, like they live, they have audio. We haven't released them all yet, but they exist in the world where we actively record.
That's pretty astonishing if you look at that kind of growth rate.
Yeah, the trajectory has been pretty great. And the thing is, we haven't even hit the fun stuff yet. Like this has all been sort of evergreen, like informational content podcasting, and we haven't even started to do like entertainment podcasting yet.
Yeah.
We're just starting to.
So for those of you who are listening, just have listened to the GynoCast and are hearing about Matriarch for the first time, can you give the 30 seconds sort of what is Matriarch? What is the vision?
Matriarch,
what's it about?
Okay, Matriarch is a podcast network. Our job and our goal and our mission in life is to make podcasts for women by women and a few good men. What we do with all of our content, our mandate is simple. We always want to encourage, uplift, educate, and respect women with everything that we do.
Dang. I
That's
feel
what we
like
do.
I feel like tearing my blouse and running around.
Tear your blouse
I'm not going
and
to
run
do.
around. You're always tearing your blouse.
So, if you want to get more information on Matriarch Digital Media, what is the website?
It's easy. There is a website, matriarchdm.com. We actually are just in the throes of updating it. It's going to be more of a community space. It's always essentially been a splash page before where you can find things, but it wasn't where we live. It's going to be where we live now. So I'm making it look real nice for you. Right. We also have social media. So we're on all of the major social medias. We have Twitter and Pinterest and Instagram and Facebook. Facebook is usually where you'll find us for the most part. So if you go to Facebook and type in Matriarch Digital Media, you can like the page. We talk about everything there. We talk about the shows. We talk about things that interest us. We try to engage community there and do everything that we can to help encourage women, particularly Gen X women, to feel good about where they are in the stage of life that they are in. I tell everybody I am proudly weeks away from being 44 years old. I am happy for every single day on this planet I get. I am super proud of my age. I'm super proud of everything I have learned and earned and accomplished at this stage of my life. I wouldn't want to go back and be 20 if you paid me. I like my life right now. And I think every woman at this stage should like the life that she lives right now where she is. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's yours, and you're allowed to be proud of it. And you should be proud of it. And that's what we try to do. We try to make podcasts that make you feel like you're sitting with your most trusted girlfriends, your most trusted confidants. And when you sit down and have brunch with your besties, you have that thing where it doesn't matter how horrible your week has been or how hard your life has been right now. You feel good because there are people that get you and support you and make you laugh and make you feel like you're valuable. You have value. And if you get even a little bit of that from one of the shows we make, then we've done our job and we're proud of that.
Wow. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So thank you, Twila Dang, for being the first of what I'm calling...
Yeah, you in the setup.
Yeah, I totally set you up.
It's okay.
So the first of my Powerful Women series, if you'll let me call it that. I don't know
you
what
can
I'm going
totally
to call it.
I
I kind of like the Powerful Women series where I want to do what I've done with you, which is I'm going to find women that inspire me, that inspire others, that I can sit down and just kind of dig in a little bit because it's I know a lot of women like you. That
yes, you do.
That really elevate me in many ways, and so I hope that other people will listen to this and also be inspired by your story and what you've done. And I will say personally, it's been a delight to be to call you a friend, to work with you, to be in your orbit, because it's just sensational and it's exciting adventure.
Well, thank you. When listen, as always, we have to now I'm gonna do the actual business of the podcast.
Okay.
So you should go support us. We talked a little bit about the website. We talked about the Facebook page. We also have an actual page for the Gyno Show. It's a private group. It's called the GynoCast. Go to Facebook, type in the GynoCast, and you can join the page. Just click that you'd like to request to become a member. We actually have to vet you. It's super easy. We just want to make sure that we're having people there that will take the kind of discussions we have seriously and give them the reverence they deserve.
Respectfully.
And it's a wonderful supportive space. We want to keep it that way. So if you request that, you can become a part of it. As always, if you want to interact with this show or other shows from Matriarch, we have a lovely little email handle. It's called hello@matriarchdm.com. And you can email the show, ask your questions, leave your comments. Trust me, any opportunity for me to speak less, I will take. So feel free to email us, and we will share your thoughts and not my own. And even though this is quite the setup today, I'm happy to do it. I'm always happy to try to advance. If any part of my story helps somebody else get to their story, then I'm happy to do it. So
wonderful.
Thanks for doing it.
So thanks for listening, and we will see you soon.